Greetings. I'm at a cat sitting place. That's one of my jobs here in Brooklyn, and there are two separate library systems in New York City. The New York Public Library and the Brooklyn Public Library are two different systems. You have to have two different cards, but you can have both cards, and the Queen's too is also separate. So I have all three cards actually, and some books are not available in the New York Public Library, and they are available in the Brooklyn Public Library, and that's the case with this book and another of Evan Hunter books that I ordered put on hold through the computer and picked them up when I came here to do my cat sit. And this is a 2002, I believe, book by Evan Hunter, by Simon and Schuster. Yeah, 2002. So the moment she was gone. So that means it's kind of late in his career of this novelist, master storyteller. I mean, this is a good almost 50 years after the Blackboard Jungle hit, and then of course he went on to do many other fabulous, wonderful novels as Evan Hunter, as well as, like, I don't know, 200 crime novels as Ed McBain. So the guy knows how to tell stories, and I think this was a really good story and a really good novel, and I very much enjoyed it. Glad I was able to pick it up here and read it in a form of a book instead of an ebook somewhere, which I probably might have been able to get somehow. But yeah, so what goes on? It's basically a family story. It's told from the point of view of Andy Gulliver, and it's about he and his fraternal twin sister, Annie Gulliver. So they're basically Andy and Annie, and he sort of makes the Raggedy Ann. Mentions it along the way. So we have this narrator, and of course, when there's a narrator like that, he only knows what he knows. So, and we have his experience of what he knows. So what's going on here? They also have an older brother named Aaron. Their father has left their mother very early on when when the twins were like 5 years old. So he has left a picture. He's become a famous artist and eventually built a wonderful studio and house in Connecticut, while everyone else stays in New York City. Aaron moves to New Jersey. Aaron becomes successful as a cosmetics guy or something. And their mother is very much involved in the story as well. So what happens here is that throughout the years, it all kind of ends when Andy and Annie are 36 years old. So the novel is written in a structure that goes back and forth through events. Skillfully written, so you don't really get confused. You can follow it along quite nicely, but the real confusion here is the life of Annie and the choices of Annie. As at 16 years old, she runs off to Sweden looking for a boy she fell in love with, who was a waiter when they were in Europe before. So they kind of connected, and he kissed her a couple of times, and so she's kind of smitten with this guy and writes him a bunch of letters and never gets anything back. She goes to Europe and runs around looking for him and never finds him. But What's going on here is this is a story about mental illness. It's about Annie's mental illness and Annie's, well, schizophrenia, which we get introduced to quite early on as a later scene when she's, basically at 36 is when she's in Italy and ends up in a mental hospital, and a psychiatrist who examines her there says, well, she's hearing voices, she's schizophrenic. So Andy goes through all these stories and all these tales, and the family is really in denial of all this. From age 16, she goes back and forth to Europe. She runs away and comes back. She never really has a career. She's not particularly a drug abuser. She does a little bit of weed and stuff like that. She gets all involved in tantric. She becomes what she calls herself a tantric adept. Now, Andy doesn't really go into all that as far as what exactly the tantric thing is, except that Annie is also a jewelry maker, and she's making all this jewelry that are sexual objects, like penis and vulvas. Are really the subjects of a lot of her jewelry, and she wears jewelry herself. She has a ring in her nose, and one in her eyebrow, and so that's her thing, making these jewelries. And she comes back and says, "Well, I have a jewelry shop in Paris," or she goes to Maine for a while and she have a jewelry shop there, and so what happens is, we don't really know what happened to her and how she got this way, whether it was ultimately just sort of a genetic thing. I'm not going to reveal all that, but we go through all these stories of what she tells Andy and her mother and everyone else about what's happening to her. She's being followed by FBI agents. These are the decency police. She gets involved in weird capers where she gets in fights with people and so forth. Gets molested. She gets molested on several occasions. And that keeps transferring from one person to another. She tells a story about when she was a child and they were both like 11 years old, where this guy would come through the neighborhood with a pony, a Shetland pony, and they would ride on the pony. That was a car. They would get pony rides for $1 or something. And the guy who was doing the pony rides, giving the pony rides, had the pony, slipped his hand on her skirt, molested her. And also a boy who was on the pony with her got an erection, and, there's something going on there, too. But then that story kind of switches to the super in their building, Mr. Alvarez, who is calling her from below the sink where he's doing some work, and then he molests her as well. So these kind of get all mixed up together, and these stories keep coming back. There's really this sort of sexual component. Well, she, all into the tantric thing, apparently trying to control it all and being this, tantric adept. But, there's some kind of thing here where she's really been, assaulted as a child, and that is, contributor to maybe her schizophrenia. We don't really know because Andy doesn't really know. And the family is basically in denial all through. They have and Andy gets married, and there's a scene where Andy's wife is attacked by this woman, and there's other situations where Annie is kind of can be violent I mean, in this particular case, she gets insulted and hits her with a hammer. This is really late on, and Andy and Maggie's relationship just does not last through this. They become divorced. So really, it seems that his unfortunately insane sister is a contributor to the destruction of that marriage, and you know, Andy's kind of upset about that. There's a scene where he gets together with Maggie later and says, yeah, you were right, and I was in denial of what was going on. We should have called the cops when that happened to you, but we didn't, and things like that. So I loved the book. I think this is one of Evan Hunter's finest novels. It's very short. It's only 208 pages, and I just thought it was really terrific, and I completely loved it, and found I loved that it was set in New York and Manhattan mostly, and I loved the wrap up of it. And it was actually quite moving, actually, which, you know, doesn't really happen to me all that much when I'm reading. But yeah, it really hits, and I thought it hits quite strongly, and is a very good Evan Hunter novel. So I highly recommend it if you want to read a great novel. And I'll be talking here on the channel again